All right, it looks like we've rolled around to the 10 o'clock hour. So I've got a big blue jay that just jumped up on my fence railing on the deck today. So even a blue jay's joining us.
All
He's
right.
Oh, good.
cute.
Very appropriate.
All righty. So welcome to the Abundant Life Service, the Abundant Life Centers service for August 23rd, 2026. It is the 23rd today, correct? Um, and today, first I'm going to light the God candle, which is the symbol for the one power in the universe known by many names. The name you choose to use is welcome here. Okay, and so while as we begin, let's center ourselves and be present for the service. So close your eyes. Imagine an old sturdy chest sitting in front of you, the kind built to last, with a heavy latch on its lock. Reach out and lift the latch and slowly open the lid. Inside, you see that the chest is completely empty. Now picture all of your worries, desires, and frustration, everything that weighs on your mind or pulls at your attention. One by one, place them gently into the chest. Take a moment to be sure you've left nothing behind. When you're ready, close the lid and turn away, leaving the chest and all of its contents behind you. In front of you stretches a breathtaking view, the vast sea from the edge of a high cliff. Feel the fresh air, hear the sounds of the waves, and take in the peace of the open horizon. Now open your eyes, and you are here, calm, present, and free. And because this is the second service of the month, we're going to share our values. We show up and act with gentle honesty and authenticity, vulnerability, caring, and trust. Open and welcoming hearts, attentive listening to, and respect for one another, an intention to connect with the divine, a dedication to community, and a commitment to grow through spiritual practice and service. And we'll have our opening song, which is We Are the World.
That's a lot of energy. Wow.
So that song came out about 40 years ago, a little more than 40 years ago. Does it feel like it?
It
It's a
was cool seeing all those old guys and gals.
it's a lovely song. Today, we have the pleasure of having Linda Stasel be our facilitator. Linda is one of the longest standing community members, and she's wants to share information about a book called The Power of One, I believe. And so we'll let Linda explain that when after the meditation. So um, we have a meditation called a meditation for inner strength now. Oh, that was a lovely meditation. Thank you, Linda. And now I'll turn it over to Linda Stasel.
Hi. I think I was at some point like looking at books on my shelf that I haven't read, and I don't think had read this one. And it's nice and thin. I picked it up and got into it. And the power of one was a nice idea. So I was interested to see what the guy had to say. And then what really kind of gave me impetus to keep reading was that he starts out, this too was written a while back. It was published in 1990, first published in 1990. So we were 10 years ahead of going into the change of the millennium. And that was a time of concern. And the whole millennial thing, I think, was a concern in many ways for society. Um, so he starts out by talking about the crises that we're dealing with, not just in the US, but throughout the world, and how they're interrelated. He calls them mega crises. And probably should get my notes here so it's not all memorized. Um, and when he talked about him, I thought, like what has changed? Here we're 30, 35, 36 years later, and I'm sure it took him a little while to write the book. And one is economy, the haves and the have-nots, economic disparity between the super rich and super poor. Diversity, the them versus us mentality based on ethnicity, cultural diversity, and such. Growth of hate groups, surfacing of long buried, trying to tell what that word is, long buried resentments is what it comes down to. Something, interactions of culture, long buried. Anyway, what came to mind was the MAGA movement and how it's been there and just was not visible. So things surfacing. Ecology, both the danger of pollution and, as he describes it, introduction of waste into Earth, the Earth's ecosystem beyond its carrying capacity. That sounded pretty meaningful to me. And overconsumption, the resource depletion beyond the Earth's ability to regenerate. And then this one was kind of unexpected, fulfillment. And in that describes the addictive society, search for personal, social, and spiritual fulfillment. And I know there's a time in my life that I was really aware of that and, what people do in trying to search for that. And in that category, he mentions dwindling hope, which I know is both a big thing during COVID, and I think these days for some people too. Spiritual, personal, and social malaise, and crimes of violence. Shallow patriotism, I'm not sure that's around anymore. And the rise, this I'm not sure is statistically true anymore, but I think there is a difference now. Rise in birth amongst the poor. I know there is a decrease in birth amongst the people that are comfortable. And then the last one was leadership, which is a little harder to get what he's trying to say. He says, a vain attempt to maintain the status quo. And I think that's part of the big message of the book, that these are problems that are interrelated. You can't just try and reduce greenhouse gases and expect it to get fixed. And I think the basis that we've heard said a lot of times You can't solve the problem on the level of the problem. It's not, he talks about not being a linear hierarchical system that's going to solve the problem. And leadership, lack of vision, and the whole leadership, which is power over people instead of, grassroots power among people. So those are the main things. And I thought, my gosh, and then later in the book, one of the latter chapters, he says, will this be, 20 months or 20 years before we've resolved these? And he was feeling that, it would be done in 20 years. And of course, we're 35 years later, and some things have changed, but the issues are largely still there. So then the question is, what is the power of one in dealing with all of that? And he goes through a lot of things. And one comment as I was researching about the book too, is that while this book is like over 25 years old, it has been sustained in publication apparently, or availability, partly because of its at that time, a different view of leadership. He talks about authentic leadership. And he talks a lot about the examples of Gandhi and King, the qualities they brought that made them heard, moral character, living your values, not really protesting, not talking about what you're against, but what you're for, focusing on that solution instead of the problem. We know that quite well. And so that is, what I heard that was what has kept the book. But then it's like, what do we do every day individually? And there are there's the whole big leadership thing, which since I'm there, I'll start there too. It's like motivating people, kind of growing a movement or a consciousness, really. I think his bottom line is we need to change a consciousness to a consciousness of compassion. And as I could see those words in the song, so many of them just were like what, were things that could be labels in his book. It was interesting. So one example he gave that I hadn't heard of was a man, I think it's Thomas Woolman, it was his last name. And he, back in the 1700s, he was a Quaker. And in his heart, he knew that slavery was not right. And so he just went around to the individual Quakers in the community and throughout the area. It said over decades. And he'd go back and just talk to people about it, try and, have them see that perspective, that it's against human dignity and, religious principles, and would go back repeatedly to people that, didn't see that new perspective right off the bat. And ultimately, what resulted was that the Quakers took a stand against slavery because it was not in alignment with, their values. And then down the road, they were very pivotal and, a big force in the Underground Railroad during the Civil War, helping slaves escape. And it's like, what a difference one man made just by talking. And that was talking to people in his community, his, overall like-minded people, about something that was just a little different than what the norm was then. And so I thought that was just a really relevant example that it doesn't have to be, even on the big scale kind of changes, it doesn't have to be Gandhi or King or, actions like that to show the power of one person. And then at a smaller scale, he talks about authentic leadership. And authentic leadership it's described in different ways, but it's leading with compassion, knowing in your heart what's right and following your values, whether other people are, coming along or not. And he talks about just, doing that in your everyday life, in the grocery store checkout line, in traffic, um, in your as a family member, with coworkers or community members. So, the everyday kind of things. And that's one of the questions that I want to have us think about. What are the things we do or can do in that realm to further kind this kind of compassion, authentic leadership, living our values, and ultimately, hopefully, having things work out better for everyone, making a difference. And then he talks about, like every single act we do can be a positive step, a neutral step, or something back. And a couple examples that he gave from his life are one, where he purchases things or what he purchases. And he says, if I buy a light bulb from GE, GE is making bombs, nuclear bombs at the time. I don't know what they're doing now. This is what he says. And so that's where my money is going to support that. Whereas if I buy a sandwich, it was from some local group, that money is going into these different community activities. And I hear about, social investing and stuff, and I know we've had people in our community that were really aware of non-GMO and, things like that are, it's like ethically based kind of things. So it gave me more food for thought of how I could be more aware of when I spend my money, where it is ultimately, what is it is ultimately supporting. Um, and then he talks about that authentic leaders are subversive. And by that means, he says that I thought our group would love that, subversive, but I don't know. And he says that subversive means coming to turn things from underneath, so, and one of the examples he gave in his life is he rides a bicycle, and he said if everybody rode a bicycle or took public transportation for things within 5 miles, that would totally upend our system of roads and gas stations and, he doesn't say fuel use, but all the systems that support the use of vehicles, which is the major default, I think, in the US for transportation. So those were, I'll tell you, it was kind of hard for me to figure out what I was going to say. I asked ChatGPT to summarize things. Thank you, Eric. And then I went through and made notes. I had like 4 or 5 pages here. And then the last thing I did was make one of those little diagrams about the different topics. And now I'm just talking about from what I remember. So I'll look at my little diagram here and see if there's something else I want to talk about. The other thing I think that really hit home was the us versus them, because it's easy to see that happening outside and in our society. And I know what happens at times in a different ways for myself and for people we know. And his statement is to have no enemies, and it's common for people to say, oh, the lumber industry is, they make it an enemy. Or the drift net fishermen, they said. Now that's not for me, but maybe the ones that are overfishing. But I grew up as a not drift net, but a fisherman, so I didn't buy into that one. But they're different groups. He talked about the skinheads. Just people that I think sometimes it's like we don't relate, either we don't relate to or we don't like what they're doing. They become the other, um, and sometimes the enemy, the thing we have to combat. And in his vision of how it would work is just remembering that every person is a child of God and deserves, not to separate from them, to, you know, bring them in. And one quote he had from, I think it was Gandhi, was to the effect of, and I have it written down here, I don't know if I'll find it easily, to the effect of, um, his intention being that anyone that perceives themselves to be an enemy of his, it's not that he thinks, but they think that he's an enemy, to make them a friend. And and then another thing that was kind of challenging for me in terms of the leadership, and I think this goes at the level of Gandhi and King, but in smaller ways relates to everyday risks we take in standing up for things or speaking out or our actions. And that was being without fear. And we are controlled by fear. And you're saying if the Holocaust, in his view, wouldn't have happened if people weren't either afraid of pain, afraid of death, were afraid of something and therefore acquiesced. And then there's the whole denial thing about things, it won't happen to me, or in the ecology, that's an issue he gets into. But, the whole that thing about not being able to be controlled because you're fearless. And Gandhi's had said something to the effect of, "You can kill me, and then you have my dead body, but you do not have my acquiescence or my cooperation." Um, so those are the ones, and there's probably a whole lot more I can share. Um, the things that, kind of stick with me in terms of why is this book useful right now? And I think one of the reasons, I just, all the news hasn't gotten to me up until I think just in the last, real recently, with I'm getting all these texts, from political things. And even just reading enough of them to know that it's something I need to delete, or just to be maybe informed to know, it was getting to me. And so now I just tend to go delete, 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 delete. I don't need that. Um, so anyway, that's why I wanted to share it. A couple other things he talked about is that power comes through taking responsibility. Um, and an authentic leader not only takes responsibility, but then sees how they can share responsibility. So it's a cooperative kind of thing. And another thing he talked about was culture. And this is, like norms and what is not said, but is kind of expected. And his personal experience was, he said, as a private person, he moved in this neighborhood where everybody kept their blinds open and their lights on. It made it a welcoming place. And nobody ever said anything, but ultimately he kept his blinds open and his lights on. It was just the norm there. And he conformed for whatever reason. And then one that was interesting from Japan, somebody reported asking a policeman that he had seen, or asking someone, he saw a policeman turn on his lights or whatever when a guy started to jaywalk. And the guy just went back to the curb. And so the fellow asked the policeman, what's the fine they get for jaywalking? He says, there's no law, there's no fine. I'm just reminding the man of his duty. I think we've lost a lot of that, what we've thought were norms and such. People are not aligning with anymore, a lot of people. So we're in a real state of flux. And as many people have said in different situations, um, looking at breaking through, when you see things breaking down, look, what is breaking through? Out of chaos comes the basis of new and better things. So there's that message in the book too. So, in a nutshell, that's what I wanted to share. And I mentioned that one question that we might think about commenting on or whatever. You can ask questions or comment. Oh, and then there are a few more ideas that I got from ChatGPT, what might be discussion questions. Where might you have more power to create change than you previously thought? I think that's a nice one. Or what experience have you had in a situation where something you did have had a much larger effect than you had ever expected it to have? So those are a couple things. And what is one way in our everyday choices, we either now reinforce systems that reinforce separation, um, or create connection with people, whichever we do. So that's what I guess I'll share for now and open it up for people's comments and discussion.
Linda, first, may I ask you, who was the author of this version
Yeah.
of the Power of One?
The Power of One, the subtitle is Authentic Leadership in Turbulent Times. That's how you find it instead of just Power of One. And the author is Sharif M. Abdullah. And we actually had a little mini workshop with him, the ALC group, years ago. I think that's how I got this book. One of the gals, he's from Portland, um, and one of the gals, I guess, knew him and had him come and, he shared about stuff. So, and there's one thing that I found but that's still like 10 or 15 years ago, where he did a talk at Portland University, one of their style TEDx talks about that leadership.
Mm.
Mhm.
So your question, what do we do or what can we do to further compassion and authenticity? That's, I think we're gonna all have a big opportunity right now in the upcoming election. As things are rolling around and we start to look at new candidates for president in our country in 2 years. And one guy who's talking about running is Governor Newsom in California. And a woman just wrote a memoir of her time as a staffer for him when she was married and had an affair with him. And for her, it was a pretty traumatic situation. And Newsom's team is just writing it off as, well, it was just a little dalliance and it wasn't much of anything. And, it doesn't really matter. But he was the person in power. And despite the fact that she was a willing participant, he had a lot of authority over her. And so, it's a time where we have to hold our politicians to a certain level of um, authenticity and respect. When examples of how they respect other human beings on the planet, instead of just writing it off, boys will be boys, and this is the way people are, we have to elect leaders who really have other people's best interest in the forefront of their actions. Actions speak louder than words. So informing ourselves as to who the people are who are running for office, instead of just going, okay, I'm voting for all the Democrats because that's what I usually do. Um, we really have to really pay attention to people's character more than we have. And so I'd say supporting and encouraging political candidates with, of course, we can't know everything everybody does, and we all mess up sometimes in our lives, but we have to look to support people with character and authenticity. So that's a good reflection.
And as you talk about that, and take people that take responsibility,
Right.
that's the other thing that really comes to mind that you're saying.
Yeah.
What might I do in that mission that you're sharing? And what popped into my mind was, have conversations with people about that, the importance of character with our leaders. Because I think that many, many people would agree with that, but maybe don't see, maybe don't, I don't know, don't hold it as strongly as you're expressing it, which I think is a valid and valuable thing, really using it as a criteria and taking a stand. This is what we want. You take responsibility or do it right. And, so, that whole thing of conversations with people, I think that connecting with people and discussing things, it doesn't even have to be about a candidate. It's just that quality that we want, in our leaders. So that came to my mind. What
Yeah, substance over flash, just try and find out where the substance are. But even the people that you hold up as examples of authentic leadership, Gandhi wasn't perfect.
Mm-mm.
And there's so but you have to, yeah, you have to just try and find that, I would say, their baseline of, what their, I don't want to say morality is, but their authenticity. I think being authentic is really important. And I think more of this is coming to light, just as you said, um, when you see things breaking down, what is breaking through? And what's breaking through is things that were hidden for so long are coming to light. And we have to make the choice now that we're seeing things for what they are, finding out information that we didn't know before, like all the Epstein stuff and all of that. Um, we have to make choices based on all the information we have. Getting more information is really important.
Well, I decided to go look and see what was going on in the world the time he was writing that. The Berlin Wall came down. They had the Velvet Revolution. Dictators were overthrown. Tiananmen Square happened. World Wide Web was beginning. And it was cool that people were taking action. Some were successful, some were not, but I'm sure that they were very proud of the action they took in any case.
I do remember in 1987 when the Berlin Wall came down, how hopeful I was, how excited I was, how optimistic I was for the future because I thought, okay, now people can be their authentic selves, they can live their life without totalitarianism, and wow, we're on the cusp of a brave new world. And and then we,
Yeah. Yo-yo.
peaks and valleys.
Mhm.
You
Eric, you've
see,
had your hand. What would you like to share?
yeah, what made me think your expose made me think of all these systems that are bubbling up and down and continuously moving. They have their own free will and create. And on the other hand, and you showed that with the example of the bicycle, it would be better if we all would be using a bicycle. But that's what we're trying to do, and then it falls apart because it continuously bubbles and changes with the energy. It's really our judgments that puts us in this situation where we say, one thing is right and the other one is not right, but in reality, they're both right, right? The question is, again, where do we put our energy? And ultimately, I believe the energy is in the balance. It doesn't really matter as long as we, as a person, as an experience, find this balance. That's my opinion about that.
I don't think I totally get what you're saying. I get it kind of conceptually, but like what can you say it a little more specifically?
Well, you were talking about MAGA too, right? So MAGA comes up. Okay, now there are other things that are happening. It's a system, and other systems react to that and take place and start moving things. And this is on every aspect of our life. It's not just MAGA. It may be our food. Okay, right now I'm interested in certain part of health, so I'm looking at certain part of food. But maybe in a month, 2 months, I don't care. So these things just continuously float up and down based on the moment where things influence one another, right?
Oh, Eric, you're just reminding me. I read a book about that years and years ago.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the title, but yeah, that things happen good, bad, and then they're bad and good, and then they're good and bad, and then they're bad
Yeah.
and good, and it
And
just keeps going up and down and back and forth.
and I believe this is by design. This is by design in our environment, because what's happening is really consciousness is trying to know what it is. It's trying to learn itself. And it learns itself through this experience. But they're not the physical experience, because that's not what's happening. It's the energies that you have, the emotions that you have associated with that. This is where it's learning itself. Okay? So you can have very negative emotion, be fine. But eventually you're going to learn to balance them out into positive emotions. And when we have this continuous floating, stabilizing, I think this is where our world can fall apart, because we don't need it anymore.
But I think
Because
it
there's nothing
is,
to learn.
well, it's like Linda said, individual choices are influencing that up and down.
That's true. So true. They do. But they are, again, individual choices, but they can also be choices of groups. But they influence you individually just as well, energetically, right? You're never in an isolated system. You are within the system. You are within the consciousness. So the consciousness influences you too, because it's a closed system.
I remember
So
one
when you
time
say the
when,
consciousness, are you meaning like God, or what are you meaning when you say the consciousness? Or
Um,
cultural, or
I
what?
will talk about that in a month when we
Oh,
so I have an agenda there,
No,
but I'll
footnote.
talk about that more detailed. Uh,
stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Okay. Sounds a little bit like the consciousness of culture, or the world's
collective consciousness.
outlook.
Well,
Yeah.
every system has a certain consciousness.
Hmm.
You are a system. You have a certain consciousness. Here in the ALC group, we have a certain consciousness. America has a certain consciousness. So all these systems influence one another continuously, because we are in the same field.
Arlene, I thought I saw your hand up. You're muted.
She knows. It's not quite unmuted yet. Try again. No, keep going. Is there something else you're supposed to press, maybe?
We can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear. I think she's saying she's going to try and figure it out. She put her glasses on.
Okay. Does anybody else have a comment while Arlene's working on getting herself
Well,
unmuted?
regarding the hate thing, I remember a Star Trek episode where this culture in this particular planet, if you were had black on this side and black on this side, you would hate each other to death, and they would kill each other just because they had that difference of what color their face was. And they rescued the one person who was still alive, and he had the opportunity to stay on in the Enterprise with him, but he had chose to go back to the planet. So that was one person's decision. But I loved that because it was so superficial a difference, And we do that to ourselves too.
Arlene, you're unmuted. Great.
I'm unmuted now. Oh,
Hey.
because I feel like I got all this stuff bubbling up, but I want to share. And I absolutely agree with some of what I heard Eric talking about. Because, I remember, Linda, when we had Sharif Abdullah come and talk to, I was in the middle of all of that, and I liked him then a lot. And I agreed with him. I don't agree with him anymore because we are not one. We are Godzillion, and it depends of I want everything my way. If I don't want to eat strawberries, just because you like them, I don't want to eat them. And it's like my personal choice and what I'm going to wear and what I'm going to eat and how I'm going to talk and who am I going to relate to and who am I going to vote for and how am I going to like you and how am I going to love you and how am I going to respect you and what am I going to do if you say something that I don't agree with? Am I going to want to smack you in the mouth or am I going to tell you to shut up or go fly your plane somewhere else in another hemisphere? It's like, I think we all got to learn about how to live together when we're not all one, when we disagree with each other, and we can't just X somebody out because we don't agree with them and we don't like them. We got to figure out, my life, I had to figure out how to survive and how to get along with people that I don't agree with, not only don't agree with, but don't like. There's a lot of people I don't like, but they're running the country, they're running the world, and they're going to make decisions. They're going to be different thinking and different color and different thoughts. And it's like a pizza, it's like eating a pizza with all this stuff on it. And what I don't want to eat on my pizza, I'll pick off and put in a pile over here because I don't want it, You know what I mean?
That's a beautiful metaphor. Thank you.
Yeah. And I don't know what he said back then. I remember only one thing. I don't think it's the right thing to share right now. I'll share it during sharing if we want. But what I get from what I read is his conclusion is that everyone is a whole unto themselves. And then they have whole things that are whole within them, the operation of their lungs or whatever, we're parts of other wholes, kind of what Eric's talking about, these communities at different levels. The only aspect I was getting and reading about the we are one is, just like we say, we're all children of God, we're not, and having them as other enemies, distancing ourselves is where he, says don't separate, we're one, we affect each other. What we do has an effect on others. So we can't just ignore the fact that we're, interrelated. But you might have heard a different thing, and I hear what you're saying in terms of individuality, and he might have said something different in the class. I don't remember what he said.
Well, and we all have different ears when we're hearing at different times.
Mm-hmm.
And my ears today are hearing the whole thing about we are one. We are not one. We are totally not one. And I got to learn how to let you be you and me be me because I don't want you to be me because, you have really pretty hair and a wonderful smile. And I want to give you every space in the world to express yourself as long as you're not trying to tell me I got to be different. If you're going to tell me I got to be different than who I am, I don't like that. I really don't. And I get defensive and I get mad and nothing good can happen from that.
So the meaning of what it means by being one, I think, is means different things to different people. And I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Language.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I do like the reminder that we have to remember that our actions have an effect on other people. You don't have to care what that effect is, but our actions will have an effect on other people.
Yeah, when somebody does a good job, I was in a restaurant and the lady changing the napkins, and the napkin dispenser was doing a great job. I mean, she was being very careful. She was straightening those little napkins out. And I said, "You are really doing a good job doing with those napkins." And I really appreciate people who do well in their job. And the biggest old smile came on her face. And so that I made an impression that day. I helped somebody feel better about themselves and what they were doing.
That's a good point. And when he said, what action have you taken that had a greater effect than you thought it would? Like you're sharing that. I have two experiences in my life, and it's not any action I intentionally took. It's just being me, And one was when I was in this hotel room and really kind of low, having to find an apartment in a city I didn't know, and they were all unfurnished, and oh, what a chore. And I was just sitting in that hotel room because I had no place to go. And the maid told the maid, come on in. And she came in, and then she said, you're just like a little angel sitting there. It's just like, it was really, it's like, whoa, it's just the most unexpected ways you impact people sometimes, And the other one was there was a ladies group I was part of when I lived in Houston. And there was one gal who was like, a real businesswoman and all. And at one point, after we'd been together quite a while, she says, when I'm wondering what to do, I think, what would Linda do? And it's like, my jaw dropped, you know? So, gosh, we have no idea the impact that we have with people.
I think we all need bumper stickers instead of what would Jesus do? What would Linda do?
Yeah,
I was
Sweet.
remembering yesterday, I was watching the news, and it's where this young Russian man does the news. And I was explaining to John my feelings about this kid because I worked in a school where there's all different cultures of kids. And I really didn't like what these Russian boys did walking down the hall. They took up the whole hallway and they did this whole thing, and they do it with an attitude. And the attitude is they don't respect women. And where was I in all of that? And then I became in the process of doing an intervention on this boy from Austria. This kid spoke 7 different languages. He was an amazing kid, and he had a drinking problem. He was drinking, and to get an assessment and trying to find help for this kid, he needed a man. He can't have like a woman like me come in to try to tell him about the dangers of drinking and what he's doing. I can't have any headway. I got to see who his family is. I ended up getting from the school paid for me to get somebody that could speak language. So he drove me in his car out to meet this family. And I learned after the fact, after I rode in a car with him, that he didn't have a driver's license. I didn't ask to see his driver's license. I got in the car. I have my intention. My intention is to go and meet this family, and they speak a language that's different than me. And how in the hell am I going to do this? Well, I'm going to get in the car and go over there, And it all worked. And I had to forget. Since then, I've had to really look at what I do with my ideas. What I learned from that family is this kid's dad was like a preacher. It was a community thing. He was like the main man. The woman in that household had a beautiful house and curtains and drapes. Her big whole thing was all these little pretty doodads and curtains and all that. And she brought me a cake, this big, beautiful cake with strawberries on it. And I'm going to talk with this translator, and I'm going to tell her that her kid has an alcohol problem and we got to get him in treatment. And in the process, I find out that this kid's dad is like a minister in this whole community of people, and he's a closet drinker. He's a closet alcoholic. He drinks. When we say a closet drinker, means everybody protects him. The whole family is caught up in keeping this guy's secret, and he's the dad running the family, and all these women are making it all work and bringing strawberry cake to me, and
So give me the wrap up here. I love the story, but give me the wrap up. What are you sharing here? What's missing?
I'm trying to share, Linda, about differences in what we do with people are different. We are not the same. It's not my job to change people to make them be more like me. It's my job to look at what I do with the differences and what I learn and whether or not I want to eat strawberry cake.
I would
Or
eat strawberry
confront the
cake.
family that
Well,
uses
everybody but
alcohol.
Arlene would eat the strawberry cake.
Yeah.
I don't want strawberry cake. I don't like strawberries.
We got that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ananda or Laurel, do you have anything that you want to add to this conversation? Yeah, those phones must be a challenge for unmuting.
I never can find the controls when I'm dealing with my phone. Yeah. You'll succeed, I know.
Laurel will keep at it.
Mm-hmm.
Ananda, are you okay? Ananda's radio silence.
They're radioactive.
Did he just put a picture there? He's so still. Maybe he left.
Oh, he just moved.
Yeah.
Well, Jackie's
Well,
with us. Does
no, it
Jackie
looks
have
like-
anything
Yeah,
to say?
Jackie. Hi. It's good to have you with us.
Oh, there she is. Hi, Jackie.
Hey, I just so appreciate what everybody is sharing. Linda with the book, and Kay, the whole thing about character in our leaders. And Eric, I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to share about the consciousness. Carol, Arlene, you guys are so awesome. I so appreciate all of you so much.
Thank you.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
you can, Laurel. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I have my laptop that has been limping along for a very, very long time. Finally just died this morning. It would not put me up on Zoom. So I'm on my phone, but I just wanted to say that it's a really interesting topic, and I feel like I need more information, and there's more to discuss about it. Does anybody else feel that way? No?
Wait,
Laurel,
All right.
you could lead a discussion of some of the topics you want to focus on.
I doubt it.
Yes, you could.
Can you mention just one thing you would like to learn more about?
Well, I mean, I think we're a very kind of cerebral kind of group. You know, it's like we talk about ideas a lot, and some of the ideas feel just a little bit out of my reach, even though they sound interesting. So it was intriguing to hear her talk about it, and I've enjoyed the discussion, but I feel like I'm not quite informed. It really sounds fascinating, the power of one. So that's my take on it. It's nice to see everybody. I know they can't see me, but
Well,
Anyway.
I could give you an example of a power of one. The company I was working with in San Diego, the manufacturing engineers and the people on the assembly floor were at odds with each other all the time. The engineers thought they were gods, and the people on the assembly floor knew more about some of the things than the engineers ever dreamed of. It was my job to review materials that had been created in manufacturing that were discrepant. So this is called the MRB committee. So when I started into the MRB committee, the first thing I did was make sure that everybody got to talk. So if the engineers were talking and somebody wanted to interrupt them, I said, let them have their say. And if the people that were in assembly wanted to say something and the engineers tried to interrupt them, I said, no, listen to what they have to say. We can learn from them as well. And after working with that for 3 or 4 months, the whole atmosphere in MRB changed to respect and consideration. So yes, one person can make a difference by standing up for their values. And I just wouldn't let those people be mean to each other.
Maybe one comment to Laurel, and as a matter of fact, to all of us. My observation or my experience is that if you have an open mind about something, and when you listen or hear something that does not resonate with you, instead of putting the kibosh to it and say, well, that can't be, that's stupid and it doesn't exist, just let it sit there and let it do its own job with you. Because what I noticed is if I put an idea out there that I focus or I keep in my mind as being important to me, suddenly information appears synchronistically. I mean, I do, like I said, a lot of scrolling through videos on YouTube. And for whatever reason, suddenly a video about this topic is coming up. And
Honey,
then there are other ones.
it
And
might be more Googleistically than synchronistically.
yeah, and they don't come all at one time. There's a progression that I noticed. You know, the depth is growing. The more I learn more about the topic, and it's kind of interesting. And it's not something that I control. It just happens.
And I remember one time, Eric, too, when you were so far into the atmosphere from what I could understand, I think I said, okay, I kind of see where you are, but I can't be there yet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The Course in Miracle for me was 30 pages, and I put it down for 6 years.
And you got there. So what I took away from Laurel's comment is maybe as individuals, maybe as a group, how can we get out of our heads into our hearts and from our hearts into the world, into our lives? If we are constantly batting around ideas on a intellectual level, but don't translate all of that stuff into real world experience, how does it make a difference?
So maybe in conclusion, if anyone has a comment, regardless of if it was what Sharif was presenting or what I shared, is there something from your experience today that you want to take into your life, be more aware of, take action on, whatever,
I'm going to it's of course from the ebb and flow and the rise and tide, there's times when I'm more conscious about my choices in what I buy and times when I'm less conscious about what I buy. So we may not be seeing the Amazon truck at our house quite so often in the next little while. We'll see.
Yeah.
Oh, don't even do that. You buy from Amazon too. You don't have any halo on your head.
An Amazon fast.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the Amazon, that's a good one.
Yeah, see if I can do it for one of my friends didn't buy anything from Amazon for a full year. She went, she has a tendency to cut herself off from different things for a year. So, she's like, I'm not going to buy anything on Amazon for a year, and she didn't, or she wasn't going to spend money except on what she absolutely 100% needed for a year, or she wasn't going to buy new clothes for a year. And she, but she had, I couldn't do that.
Well, that's this whole thing. We're all different, Yeah. then it works. You find what works.
Wait, thank you, Linda. This was a really thought-provoking topic and discussion sparking topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as we move along, we are going to do our closing songs with my own two hands.
That was a lot of energy too. Yeah,
Great
I like
song,
that.
really appropriate for this discussion. Thank you, Linda. Nice
Did
choice.
you guys read the Creole?
Yep. But yeah, I understood every word of it too, right? No. So at this point, we close our circle and greet each other with namaste. Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste, Laurel.
Namaste.
Namaste,
For
Jackie.
joining-
Namaste.
Thank you for joining us. The Abundant Life Center is supported by God's love and your gifts. And Cheryl will send out information on how to make a contribution should you choose to do that, or you can do that on our website, Abundant Life Center. What's it called, Linda? The website?
My ALC.
My-alc.com.
my-alc.com. Thank you.